Black woman is a spectrum of things.
Woman is divine, truth, integrity.
We're strength.
Beginning, Black women are sort of the backbone and bedrock of every cultural political revolution.
I define a Black woman as a woman who is aware of her heavy existence.
A unicorn, somebody who is authentic, unique, different, hard to catch, even more hard to see in her prime.
Do I ever feel lost and invisible among Black people? No.
I do sometimes feel lost and invincible within Black people.
Yeah, I feel lost a lot.
I've had a huge journey with my relationship to Black community, as I have been a part of several.
Growing up where I grew up and how I grew up, a lot of people don't understand me.
You know, being invisible, trying to find myself.
I feel a freedom to be exactly who I am in every way, shape, or form that I am.
Defining myself and being unapologetic in who I am, it can get isolating a lot.
I found growing up in Ajax, when I did meet people that were in Scarborough or the West End, they said a lot of, oh, you're not really Black, or you're more whitewashed, or you're more this, because I didn't have this typical upbringing that most of the friends I came to know had.
Over the years, I've surrounded myself with more people who can think critically outside gender binaries and outside of stereotypical assumptions of what a queer relationship should look like.
I was proud of my Blackness, and I felt at home with Black people and community, and of course my family. And then moving to Toronto, to Canada, was a huge shift in my experience.
For a long time in my youth into middle adolescence, I kind of suppressed a lot of that.
My experience being a Black masculine woman, society treats me differently for better and for worse. I'm largely invisible when it comes to like sexual harassment that a lot of my more feminine friends go through, whether they're queer or not queer.
Being predominantly in classes where I was the only Black person.
And then one day I said I don't care anymore and just started being me.
And having to deal with a large amount of whiteness. And also my relationship to the Black community shifted after I was outed as a teenager. Because often what is said to someone who was queer and someone like me who was trans is that you can either be Black or queer. You have to choose one or the other. Because if you choose queerness, you are shaming your community and everything that they've worked for. And if you choose Blackness, then you are sort of dying inside. And so I chose myself.
Growing up in the LGBTQ plus community, I was always pressured to identify as a stud, even though I don't identify as that. And since I didn't identify as that, I was always called confused.
I actually don't identify as a Black woman. I identify as a Black femme. For me, a woman is like a particular gender. There's particular prescription of gender and what it means to be a woman. And I don't agree or identify in those ways.
The struggle I've faced due to my Blackness is being told I'm not Black enough.
I've had to find my own place, and at the same time in society, I'm largely invisible from both men and women in my experience.
My family is very colorist and they really hold to a higher standard, a lighter skin color. I remember being younger and my father telling me that I will be desirable as a woman because I am small and because my skin is light.
Our Yusra Kigali was on the mic and was like, everybody link arms and hold each other tight, keep our trans women safe. And that was the first time I had ever felt included in the Black community in a real way.
I've had to find my own place, and at the same time in society, I'm largely invisible from both men and women in my experience.
That's also been hard sometimes, being like I am Black and or I'm not qualified as Black enough.
I think that, yeah, it's very different to be a single Black mom versus a Black mom with lots of support, like a partner or family members.
I've been told by elders that I will not experience racism like most people do because I am light skinned. I've experienced men tell me they like me because of my complexion. I'm never followed in store. People are very nice. They treat me differently than someone else who is a darker complexion. So I've experienced that, and it breaks my heart, and I use my voice to speak out against it as much as possible. It's something that's so ingrained in the Black community, and it's a fight to get people to see how wrong and how toxic and how damaging it is, not only for us, but for our children coming up.
Being a female has always been great. As a Black female, though, as I've gotten older, I've started to see the things of just being in a room and having men walk past you as if you're nothing, and seeing, your fuller lips, your bigger hips, being portrayed on women of other races and colors, and that being idolized, but you have it naturally, and it's like you don't meet the qualification.
I'm largely invisible from women because I've been told that I look intimidating. Being a Black woman, also a Black masculine woman, I think a lot of women just stay away from me because they're afraid. I think I get treated maybe like a Black man, and then when it comes to Black men, I just look too dykish, so they don't really bother me at all. Men in general, they don't harass me, and they don't talk to me at all. So.
Where my identity was being prioritized to be saved, which is never usually the case with Black trans women. We're usually under all women, always. It hit me in a different way, and it was really violent. The police attacked, threw people to the ground, and I was whisked away, so I was protected.
It looks like putting my needs aside sometimes and really making sure that I'm giving to my child.
I remember when I was in my early 20s and I was dating a man that very much exuded that thug identity I was so drawn to. He was into hip hop. Everyone knew him on the streets, guns, drugs. He was very deep into that lifestyle, and I idolized it. And I remember at times feeling pride of being seen with him.
But it also is really important that I continue to feed and nourish myself and have my cup full so that I can give to her.
And then I started getting involved with BLM. They asked me to join, and my relationships with the Black community changed. But having something larger than myself, that's my sort of journey in the Black community.
The female, that's disheartening, as well as being older now, wanting to get married and have kids, and it's just I come with the real thing, and then they come with the manufactured thing, but the idea of me on that is better.
In my own experience, when I'm in a relationship with a femme, then usually they start getting harassed when they're beside me or when they're holding my hand. But if they're by themselves, they'll get harassed based on their femininity, not on their queerness.
Because he was known as that kind of person. He never hit me, but he was verbally abusive, and it didn't faze me at all because I felt like that just came with the package of being with someone who carried the thug identity. It wasn't until he showed me how to use a baseball bat to kill a man I had my wake-up call.
I had to unlearn a lot of problematic, stereotypical things that I didn't even know I was carrying. Because all of a sudden I was speaking as part of Black Lives Matter Toronto and going into all these different Black communities and having to relate to folks and talk to families who had lost loved ones with my identity and being very, very nervous about that.
It's a beautiful experience to be a portal that someone can come into this world through. That's an incredible privilege, and I recognize it as that. It just looks like navigating a lot of hostility sometimes. Sometimes it was a struggle to be pregnant and to be Black, and it didn't feel like people were celebrating that. I'd be in a prenatal class and people would be like, oh, it's so lovely to be pregnant. Everybody gets up from their seat for you, and they're just so nice, and they let you butt in line at the grocery store, and that is not at all my experience. I was very pregnant on the bus one day, and somebody actually asked me to get up from my seat to give it to someone else. And so there's this kind of erasure of your experience. Like when I was pregnant, I noticed that I got treated very differently than other pregnant people, mainly like white and non-black pregnant people. So that was tough, and I continue to see that really subtly in the world sometimes.
I think we were just like chilling in his basement. And we were listening to music, and I'm pretty sure he was high at the time as well. And he just said, I want to show you something. And he took out his baseball bat, and he's like, I'm going to show you how to kill someone with a baseball bat. And I remember feeling fear and also awe, right? I was like, oh, this is sexy. This is really cool. And then in my heart, I was like, but one day that could be me. And that was my wake up call. And I broke up with him the next day when I was not in his presence. And it was rough. And the older I got and the more aware of myself as a black woman, I realized I didn't really love those men. I loved how the identity made me feel.
Growing up, I didn't want to be black. Growing up, I wasn't as pro-black as I am now. It was my upbringing. I didn't like my hair. My mother put a lot of pressure on me to straighten my hair, perm it, and when I permed it, that was the first time that I thought, oh, my hair is like finally silky now. Like, when am I gonna grow out of my cotton hair? You know, I've always had that thought growing up.
Being one of a few black people, or the only black people in some of the firms I've worked on, I've always been expected to speak for the black race. I don't speak for the whole nomination of black people. I only speak for myself. So they look at you and be like, oh, you're black, you must know. The benefit to that, however, is being able to curve some things that some people have, a lack of better words for, an ignorance for, because that's something they didn't know. So when I see things that could be taken out of context or racially spurred, I can kind of trump that and then educate in the process my fellow peers on why this would be offensive.
It hit me that I was actually participating and perpetuating toxic masculinity when I only viewed those men as valuable because they were culturally, stereotypically thuggish.
But when I would look around at who was desirable, you know, in elementary school, it was never me. And even if it was black women, then it was the more black feminine women first. But it was always the white girls. When people thought about feminine, people thought about womanhood, they always thought about blonde and brunette. That was pretty much just the binary. Black women were not even part of the question. So I guess to feel more desirable, I wanted to be white, but I highly reject that now.
The more I find myself as a black woman is the more I realize that black men don't love black women like they say they do. In conversations with black men love parts of black women. They love how we make them feel. They love our support. They love our affirmations. They love the fact that we are their ride or die to the grave. But when it comes to protecting black women, when it comes to supporting black women in the ways that we manifest, they fail miserably. And it's scary and it's sad.
Yes, there are many parts of myself that I've had to, because of my blackness, that I've had to silence. And a lot of that has to do with the art form that I'm a part of. I'm a dancer, storyteller, and in the contemporary modern dance scene here in Toronto, they're like very behind.
A lot of the time, some of the things I have to omit and silence due to my blackness is speaking freely. You get carded as the angry black woman a lot of the times, and I'm not angry, I just have an opinion.
No, I don't omit my sexuality anymore for fear of being judged. I did in high school. I was bullied all throughout high school, especially by black girls, and I hate saying that because I don't like throwing my community under the bus, but you know, they came hard against me because I was one of them, but then they threw me out because I was not one of them because of my sexuality. I was outed in grade 9. As a girl at my all-girls Catholic school, actually, it was a terrible experience, who came out and told me that she was bisexual, and I came out to her and told her that I was lesbian, and then she went and told the whole school. I had a Black Planet page back then where I was like looking for a girlfriend and as a teenager, and somebody from school found my Black Planet page, printed it out, posted it around the school, again outing me.
Thankfully, I have curated my space to allow me to show up in the full range of my Blackness. I left corporate Canada to work for myself. I am a self-employed artist. I am a poet, which gives me license to stand on stage and say whatever I want.
In terms of diversity, cultural inclusion, understanding, some of these things are new concepts to them.
Doing more research about equity and challenging forms of oppression, since I couldn't get that in my Catholic school. Finding different language to use, because we couldn't even speak about gayness in Catholic school, even though I knew that I was one of them.
They've been around for a while now. So going through Toronto Dance Theatre, School of Toronto Dance Theatre, and I name names because I think it's important, where I was told to stop doing hip hop and stop doing African dance and anything that was culturally relevant for me, and to focus on more of the modern and contemporary and ballet, which is actually appropriated from African folk dance anyway.
The black girls who were bullying me were saying that black people shouldn't be gay. They would steal my lunch, they would take my items and throw it down the hall. They would make rumors about me saying that I was trying to look at them in the bathroom or in the change room, which to this day it's caused like trauma, like where I really can't. I removed myself from change rooms just so nobody would have the assumption that I would ever look at them. I never looked at anybody, but that was the assumption that was going on around about me, because everybody just assumes that, you know, being gay just meant being a pervert.
There were a lot of things that were happening in that space that I wasn't able to have conversations or a community of folks in the school to sort of rally behind. It was extremely difficult for me to feel safe, and then for people to actually understand why I felt unsafe.
I joined an anti-bullying club in school because of the bullying that I was experiencing, and we were speaking about different forms of bullying. When I asked my teacher in charge of that group if we could speak about homophobic bullying, she said no, because you're not supposed to be gay in Catholic school. When I was wearing buttons in my school that said homophobia sucks, my principal saw them and told me to remove them and threatened to suspend me if I didn't. So that was really just me resisting and her telling me that it was my fault, that it was that I was being bullied, and that me resisting against homophobia was me promoting homosexuality. So I had to look externally for all of the resources that I couldn't get in my Catholic school, and that kind of kickstarted the career that I have.
There was a time period where we were individuals, and slavery is one of those things that, one of the effects of it is that it brought us closer together. It meant that we had to look out for each other.
Slavery has allowed us to lose our authentic selves. It stripped us of our culture, it stripped us of our generations, and stripped us of just a lot of different things.
I think generally rape culture is rooted in slavery, I think, especially in the Americas, like raping black women slaves, feminine bodies was a assertion of power, and that's how you were gonna get more slaves.
Slavery has impacted our community greatly. There are definitely still signs of that. We could stem from parenting and family structure. We can stem to our relationship and understanding of money. We can stem to education.
I do believe that people's homophobia, black people's homophobia, stems down from slavery, because there are a lot of different colonial factors that happened in slavery that resulted in homophobia right now.
And we can stem to the fact that we protest for those who have already told us they hate us, to not to hate us. And we can stem to self-hate and self-depreciation, self-esteem issues. Our children don't know who they are. We've forgotten our stories. We've forgotten our language. We've forgotten the way that we used to dance.
Like, one is learning Christianity, or people being fixated on gayness, being equated with going to hell. Having gender binary, being there's only one way of being woman, there's only one way of being a man, you're supposed to be together and procreate.
But then it turned into a kind of policing of gender, of sexuality, of this is the right way to be black, this is the wrong way to be black. All of that is bull crap.
And unless we find a way back to that, we're not going to regain who we were.
Slavery hurt us, but I think we as a community have to grow out of slavery. It has happened. It is something traumatic, but how do we grow from that? How do we now rewrite the narrative of our stories?
Especially in the States and in Canada. So I think, yeah, just generally like using rape to hurt people and to hurt a community, like that comes from slavery, because I think it was really used to bring Black people down and to say that they weren't human.
That was a huge part of our life, but there's so many great things like having Barack Obama, Michelle Obama, Oprah, a lot of young people in our community that are doing, let's rewrite the narrative of slavery to show the greatness of through the struggle breeds greatness.
If we allow ourselves and support each other in what we want, what we deserve, which is our lives, I think we will all experience a kind of freedom that is outside of any idea of what white supremacy kind of put on us.
What does freedom look like to you?
To me, freedom looks like being self-sustainable, having access to our own resources, decolonizing ourselves. There's no freedom without decolonization.
Freedom for the Black community, I think, is being free from anti-Black racism, being free from over-policing, being free from criminalization, and stereotypes that really see us as criminal.
Freedom for the Black community, I feel, looks like limiting our interaction with those who are hell-bent on destroying us.
What freedom means to me is being authentically you. Stop suppressing who you are, what your likes are, and stop conforming to the things that media says that you need to be.
I believe we actually just have to get out of each other's way of freedom. Like what freedom looks like for me is different from what freedom will look like for someone else, and that needs to be okay.